Welcome downtown hairdressers. Hey, Shauna.
Hi, Ernie. How are
I'm
you?
good. I'm good. I'm glad we're here. I'm glad you're here.
I'm very glad to be here.
So, truthfully, you guys, we're doing this take two. We recorded an episode. Didn't turn out.
That was really rough, honestly. We had some really heavy hearts on that episode because it was really great content. And so,
Energy. We
what
had
we're
good
going to do,
energy. Yeah.
yes. And so, I feel like what we're going to try to do today is re gift that to you, but with better audio. So, here we are, round two. And what we would like to talk about today, I think, is the service industry as a whole and just mainly the downfall of service itself, like in multiple
Right, but not just in
areas.
the service industry, right? I
Right.
mean, when you think about what any industry does, I feel like a lot of them have some level of service that they have to give.
Correct.
But not just speaking to what we do, nail techs, things like that, or even like bartending, but even further than that, your phone company, your mortgage lender, your bank, your whatever, we feel like service has declined. Yeah.
Correct. Well, for instance, I had a whole little plumbing situation this last weekend,
You sure
and
did.
anyways, that was fun. However, one of the things that I noticed is that I reached out to a 24-hour number, left a voicemail and a message, like text message, and nothing was returned to or responded until today. And so, again, it's kind of like, to me, okay, is it 24 hours? Like, even if you can't make it, like, shouldn't you at least return my phone call?
Right. Well, the things that used to matter don't seem to matter anymore. And that's really what we wanted to talk about in today's episode was the lack of service that we're experiencing, I think, in all
Well,
the areas, and why, and maybe what we can do about it.
correct. Yes. Let's try to find some solutions to where maybe people can start to engage and actually want to help fellow friends and people out. And, it's not all about the bottom line. It's not all about the dollar. Like,
Well, you just hit it right there with
yeah,
giving
like people do.
a
I feel like
crap.
we're in such a place now where everything is just so monetized. Like, we have to charge for this and we have to charge for that. And it's just so heavy all the time that I think getting back to, like customer service just used to be a part of
Of
it.
it,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, and now in so many industries, you're being charged for people's, time, not just skill set, but literally just actual time.
Right.
Um,
And time is valuable. I mean,
and in
we
excess,
say
I
that all
think,
the time.
even. Don't you think in excess?
I think that there's probably a little bit of going the extra mile,
Right.
or maybe doing something just outside of your job description that used to make things so special
Right.
that isn't there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't I don't know that I know what it is. I feel like I have an idea, and I
Right.
think it's just a disconnect between people.
Right. Okay. So, like, what do you like? I guess whenever we're talking about this, like, what does customer service mean to you? Like, what is your, because we deal with the general public all the time.
Right.
Like, so what does it mean to you? What is your thing that just really grips you and makes you feel like this is what sets me apart? This sets the bar high. This is my tone.
Are you talking about with me giving
Yeah.
service?
Yes.
I think it's that connection, listening to people and doing the things, whether it be remembering to grab a beer out of my fridge for that last client I have of the day.
You're like the most amazing giver, though. You really are.
Well, I started, spoiling my people because that was something that we did.
Right.
We had the coffee and the creamer that they liked.
Right.
We had the wine that they liked, the whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it was, I just loved to do that for
Right.
people. It's not that I don't love to now. It's just, excuse me, sometimes it's a lot.
It is a lot.
To do
Yes.
all of that, and circumstantially, with regard to the beer thing, we have a tiny fridge at work.
Correct.
On our side of the break room.
It's tiny,
So
like
I'm
micro mini.
It's tiny, like a dorm fridge, and I'm glad we have it, but
Correct.
it doesn't allow you to have much in there when you're sharing with 12 other people. So it just can be a lot. But I think my connecting with those people and actually thinking about my job outside of my job thinking about it while I'm at home, thinking about my day, planning my day out, all of those things. I think the way that I operate, it just,
You're very thought out. It's very much so.
but I give a crap. I really do. I
For
really
sure.
care about these people
And it shows.
and their wants and their experience with me. So I just do the thing. But maybe that's what's not happening elsewhere.
Right.
And prime example, I had a phone incident recently with AT&T, and it wasn't just a phone incident. It was my identification. It was my debit card. It was all of these things that were gone. All of my passwords, everything. I couldn't get into anything. And I couldn't get a verification code to buy a new phone because I couldn't get into my email. I couldn't get into my email because I had two-step authentication. I did all the things, but I was so wrapped into my phone and relied on it when I couldn't access it at all. I couldn't even access my AT&T account.
Right.
And I just needed one person to take off their AT&T hat and put on their human hat. And just, what can I do to help this poor guy?
Right.
I mean, I wasn't ugly. I wasn't anything. I was desperate. I was pleading. It was awful. And I don't even remember how it got resolved. I think I had to switch out a SIM card with the phone to get the code and the whatever. But I figured it out.
Right.
But in that moment, I just was like, will nobody help me?
Right.
And it was these people that would only operate within the parameters that their rule book, that their guideline, that their computer allowed them to.
Right.
And I don't know if it was by design.
Mm-hmm.
They're not allowed. They don't have the access to help me beyond that.
Right.
Or if it was give a crap. But either way, it's like, why is it going that direction? Right.
Well, do you think, I just really had a huge epiphany while you were sitting here talking, and I was actively listening.
Yes.
Yay,
Shauna.
Woohoo! But I was sitting here thinking, the people over here with the corporation have got their hands tied. Like they're being recorded. Every move that they make,
right.
If they slip up or break protocol or whatever,
yes,
it's on record. They have to answer for it.
Yeah.
And it's like, do they lose their job or do they follow protocol? Well, they just leave you nice and super pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
But and I think I think you just hit the nail on the head,
situation.
though. It's like one of the big, main things that is causing a lot of problems in the service industry is corporate. Because you put corporate in there, and
they
have
to
all
streamline
of these,
everything.
Yeah, and they have all of these ideas and ways to cut corners and this, that, and the other. But what that does is takes away from the experience of the guests themselves. Period.
Because it makes it an easier process for them.
Correct. But that does not make it. That doesn't build up their reputation or make them a better.
No, it leaves us frustrated.
Right.
But what about on the chance that maybe one of these people that I talked to, and there were probably 30.
Right.
Maybe one of them actually did have a way, maybe it wasn't just because corporate had tied their hands so much, and maybe they just didn't want to,
I would like to say that I think that, I think there may have been something that they could have done, and I'm sure those poor people probably are treated terribly.
I can't imagine.
I can't even fathom being on the other end. No, thank you. So, thank y'all.
Yeah, thank you for doing it. But I needed somebody to connect with me. And I think that's where we're having a big problem is with not connecting with humans. And I'm going to say this, I think COVID
100%
made us afraid of each other.
Yes.
And afraid of people. And we were able to do bare minimum because it was required, right? Mm-hmm. We weren't to leave our house. We weren't to interact with other people. We weren't to go to the grocery store at 7 and 9 because, older people were going to be. We were afraid of each other.
Right.
And not just of I'm afraid of you, but I'm afraid of me for you.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It's so twisted. And I believe that people are very, very still scared of each other because here recently I've just kind of started going out and doing some more social things and, going to different restaurants and places and bars and things like that. And people don't engage the same way. People don't interact. You used to go to a bar and, unless it's a place where there's a lot of regulars and people know each other, it didn't really matter. People would still talk. Now, no. It's like you still have the little clear divider walls up, and it's like everybody looks at everybody else like they're just so scary.
Yeah.
It's very strange. But
I just think coming out of that, we slowly got back to human contact, taking the masks off, seeing faces. So I I think we got to keep going with this if we're gonna get to a place where we're connecting with people again.
Right, right. And I don't know. I think from a provider stance, like, customers lose respect for us when we are not going above and beyond and taking that extra step and that extra mile. And I guess what I was going back to with that whole epiphany was that with corporate, they've stripped people of that. But for us, I feel like that's why we still thrive and we do still have that strong sense of customer service. And I feel like anybody who is locally owned or is a smaller business, they do still have that, and they get to have that ability to customize that customer service. And I mean, what a great thing to be able to have. And I know I'm grateful for it.
Yeah.
So on that, I just kind of went off on that little tear.
I love just seeing you get into it.
But I going back to what customer service was for you, what it is for me, I kind of feel like is just knowing their name and knowing.
It's so important. Name recognition.
I had a lady,
important.
yes, that was a great mentor of mine. My second child is named after her. She's a wonderful woman, Kathy Stockton. But she taught me that at 19. I worked for her at a tanning salon, and she was like, every person that walks in that door, if you don't know their name, she said, you better. And I mean, that was literally one of her rules, and not like in a way where she was mean, but it was just vital. And I mean, when I tell you, that was back when the tanning salon was like all the rage. You know what I mean? Like, people were lined out of the door.
That was a cool place to work too.
Oh
if
my
you were
gosh,
a lovely
it was
female, and occasionally they would hire a guy, but man, that was the place to work.
I mean, it was all the things.
Yeah.
So I go to the tanning salon, worked in the day, and then go out to the bars at night.
With your tan.
With my tan. But anyways, knowing
Kathy
their name.
had the right idea. The name is huge.
And it did, and it set her apart. And there was nowhere in that town that she could go that she did not know somebody, and somebody did not feel loved or embraced by her, because she made a point to connect with everyone.
Yeah.
And I carried that over into my business. And it sounds so little and so small, but it's actually a large task, trying to remember and keep things straight. So make lots of notes.
It is. And I think anybody who's worked on the reception end of the salon business or the service business knows how big that is and how far it goes.
Right.
That was a big rule with the gentleman that I worked for in Midland before opening my salon. He taught me a lot about customer service, and I carried a lot of that over with me as well. And one of the things he was big on was names. And if he didn't know somebody's name right away, he'd grab one of his 3 assistants.
Right.
And, hey, what's her name right there? And in 3 seconds, they would have it back to him.
Right.
And he would remember from that point on. He made it a point to remember people's names, and to do that outside of, work. When you see people out and about, it goes way farther,
Right.
But I think it's huge. And when you walk in somewhere, if you walked into your, I don't know, favorite Starbucks, right?
Right.
And they were like, hey, Shauna, I mean, would you not get a little tingly and a little warm and a little embarrassed? But
no, I absolutely eat that up. And I mean, because it does. It just means they've taken a small amount of effort and taken a little bit of time, to remember who I am, probably put a little something with me so they could remember.
Right.
An
association.
Yeah. And I mean, I highly respect that. I think that's great. I think personalization is huge.
It is huge. But what you just said a second ago is the taking the time. And I think this is where maybe it might push us forward to where we really need to get back to, is taking away from you and putting the focus back on somebody else.
Right.
I think even throughout the workday, you can get caught up in your phone, you can get caught up in your thoughts, you can get caught up in whatever, in yourself.
You can get yelled at by Ernie all day long to put your phone down and engage in the damn conversations.
I wasn't prepared to talk about this today, but we can do the second half of this episode on that very subject.
It is so true, and I do think we absolutely need to touch on that at some point.
I don't mean to be a
today.
nag. I don't want to be that guy, that ex-smoker guy.
It is. It's hard, though. It's hard, you say, to disconnect and disengage with the phone and get back to seeing people. But everything is so on your phone, like everything. Well, just download this app and then get to that, and that's how you get to this on your phone. Yes. Do I scroll senseless, useless, nothingness a lot of the days? Yes, we all do. Do I try to gain from a little bit of it? Yes, but I absolutely do think people need to get away from the phones and back into engaging with one another.
I'm trying.
Face to face.
I'm trying, Shauna.
No, he's like trying to get me to do it, and I'm going to be better. I'm going to be better.
I don't mean to nag. I know I harp on this a lot. I just, you guys have got to look back at each other. We have to look at each other. We've
got to get back to where it's not just looking down, because it has caused a huge disconnect as well in society.
You know what I just saw this morning that gives me hope? There was a news story about Gen Z, Gen X.
I don't even know which one's which.
I feel like younger than us. I don't know. You're Shauna. Just Shauna.
Just Shauna.
I don't know what group we belong to, and I don't care. But they're talking about whatever generation, I'm assuming younger than us, are going back to like flip phones and brick phones to disconnect some from all of that, from being so caught up in their phones.
I'm here for it.
I mean, it just is a step, right? It's a step in the right direction, and it makes me
Well, I feel
excited.
like it just makes us like, it's so hard. I'm going to tell you where we get hung up on this one is wanting to disconnect and be more present and things like that, but wanting to get like our word out and people to hear our message. So I get caught on that little social media train just with, trying to promote what we're doing here.
Well, I understand, because
it's hard. It's a hard balance.
It is a hard balance. And I know I preach about social media. I'm on YouTube. We have a TikTok now. Like,
Ernesto
I'm running both of those.
Shauna
Well, Shauna has an Instagram. Shauna has 2 now, including the Hometown Hairdressers.
Correct.
So I'm not against it, but I am really trying hard to limit.
Correct.
After we record an episode, there's just some things I have to do. And Brent is very understanding. I try to get it done in a time that doesn't take away from our home life, because that is important. And that's something that we try to do every day with everything we do. And we keep adding things on our plate, but we're going to do it. But I mean, I know it's the day that we live in. It's the world that we live in. I get it.
So do you feel like that us being pushed so much into our cell phones to do so many things and connect in so many ways has caused us to disengage from our guests and taken away from the customer service experience?
Yes, but even more than the customer service experience, the human experience.
Right.
And I think that's what I would wrap all of this up and say is, we just have got to connect as humans again. We have to start seeing each other. We have to start focusing on each other. And I just think that the things that come after that will be, it can't be bad, right?
Correct. And so do you think that even with all the technology, have you found ways to where you can still connect with people, but like not get wrapped up in all of that? Like, I mean, stay connected, and like, how do you do it? How do you stay balanced there?
It's minute to minute.
Correct.
It's every moment to every moment.
Yes.
It's not one thing that I do. I don't take an ashwagandha. It helps me focus. I don't, it's not, there's not a miracle thing. It really is. Oh, yeah, okay. That. There's just minute to minute choosing the person right in front of you. And I do it too, and I mess up, and I will sit there, and somebody will be talking to me, and I'm like half listening, half looking at my phone. It's like, what are you doing? Put your phone down.
Right.
I've lost enough people. Not to get dark here at all, but it's very true, and it's why I feel this way about this. I've lost a lot of people in my life to death that have taught me to be this way, that have made me want to be this way, to not miss out on any more.
Right.
My heart aches for some of the people that I've lost, that I never got to just be more with them. Listen to them more. Listen to them laugh, listen to them talk, to tell the stories, to hug me, all of these things. And none of that stuff was an email or a text or anything. It was all face-to-face person, human contact.
Correct.
So that has been important to me for a while. And it grows more important as I get older. So the desire to
teach that to other people.
And make sure that I remember constantly that is when I'm left in my deathbed and I'm remembering back on my life. I don't want regret. I want to have loved and been as present as I can be.
Right. So presence is a big part of your customer service, and that's
Yeah.
why you're so loved in our industry, and I believe that to be true.
Stop it.
Stop it, Shauna. Stop it. Anywho, it's very, very,
That's
very
sweet of
much
you.
true. One of another thing I want to talk about with customer service, and we may go a little long, but
I don't care.
from a provider standpoint, we provide a premium service. Okay, I would say in the hair industry, if you're up, doing bonding treatments and you're doing, 3 and 4 hour services and sometimes even longer than that, you're working yourself up into a premium, probably pay raise area range, whatever. And I feel like after COVID that people, obviously there is a pandemic, but there is also, we've also now are in this recession type situation. But customers have gotten so bold with arguing with you about your prices. And that is another thing is I think, not just from a, customer, if you can give good customer service, but, where do you draw that line and that barrier with tacky customers? I think it's coming from both sides now. I think people are just, I don't know, but so what do you think about that?
I think that ties into everything's getting smaller, right? Mm-hmm. The portion size, a bag of chips, sodas. Mm-hmm. Have you heard about all that? Some of it's probably, I don't know, conspiracy theory is the right wording, but
it's true. They're going down in ounces instead of,
but not in pricing.
Correct.
So it's like, hey, you keep paying the same.
We're not going to raise the price.
We're going to give you less.
Right.
So maybe that's the consumer end
of what?
Of accepting that this is where we are now. Well, to that I say I refuse. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to give less. Mm-hmm. I probably do give less just because I try to work on not overgiving. Mm-hmm. So in some ways, I guess you could say I am giving less.
So I had a counselor tell me this once really quick. Can I throw this in there really fast?
Sure.
About overgivers. And this is very important. So if you're an overgiver, I really hope you're listening right now. Get out a little notepad and write it down. But if you are to a point where you are taking care of yourself as an overgiver and you start to feel a little bit guilty, like you're being a little too selfish, that's the sweet spot. That's exactly where you need to be. And you're probably taking care of yourself accordingly there and also taking care of your job, so on and so forth, your outside things. So
that makes sense because we are kind of programmed to not take care of ourselves, right?
At all.
It's selfish.
Really, yeah.
It is, if you're thinking of yourself in every moment, then
you're being a little selfish. You mean that you've been programmed to think that nurturing and caring for yourself is being selfish. And that can go into a lot of things. That can go into scheduling. That can go into, what you choose to overspend things on for customers. This goes so many ways. But what I'm saying is if you're, make sure you're taking care of yourself enough just to the point to where you're a little bit feeling selfish, and then that's the sweet spot. That's right where you should be. But continue. I'm so sorry.
Well, I don't even know what I was saying now.
I don't know, but that was such a good point.
That's a good point. Yeah, I'm sure I was on my way to make a really good one, but
sorry.
It's okay. I know.
I'm sorry for talking while you were.
Good point.
For what is it you say to me?
Excuse me for talking while you're interrupting.
That was it.
I'll move it on though. So, empathy. That's another way to sum it up, right?
Right.
Is caring about somebody else or their needs or their likes or their wants or whatever. And I feel like that's the one thing I was lacking in that AT&T experience was empathy. I needed somebody to put themselves in my shoes for a moment. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if empathy is something that we're born with, if it's something that we learn, maybe a combination of both.
I think it's something we're born with, and I think it's something that a lot of people lack.
Okay. So my sweet husband, who has taught me a lot about empathy and compassion and all that, but recently told me he himself did not experience empathy.
Right.
And it was up until a certain point, and his mother as well, that he couldn't feel empathy for somebody until he had experienced it himself. He couldn't put himself in somebody's shoes without
Like it's hard to
lawsuit.
empathize with somebody unless
Until
you've
he's
had the experience
experienced.
as well.
Right,
Yes.
right. So, I mean, it probably limits his empathy, but
Right.
I don't think so. I think maybe just the practice of it has got to help. But I don't know where I was going with that.
Well, you were just talking about empathy and the lack of it. You feel like in the customer service industry, it's like
I just don't even know what call to action you might have about doing more empathy.
yeah, how do you give more empathy? And I think that that's like a really good opener for somebody that we really cannot wait to have on this podcast. And my wonderful
Wendy
professor
Williams.
Client, Wendy Williams.
Yeah.
She's amazing. She's the professor of empathy at TCU. And so
Lovely
we
woman.
will have her on probably here pretty soon.
Well, I think with what we've just said about that, I think that would
it'd be a nice little
lovely.
follow up, and I know she's excited to share some of her knowledge, and maybe she could give us a grasp a little bit more on how do you teach empathy, because obviously she does.
I have no clue on even what to say about that. I don't know one way. I feel like the empathy was just there, but it has grown through loss and all this other stuff. But that's not something you can prescribe to somebody.
Yeah.
So I don't know what somebody could do to care more about the person in front of them, the person on the other end of that phone, the person on the end receiving whatever service they're giving.
Right.
I
would just say
and
that,
as a consumer too, like, don't be a dick to the person giving you the
don't
service.
be a dick.
Even if they're not giving you exactly what you want, just keep going with kindness.
I'll tell you this.
You can't go wrong.
I had a terrible experience at a restaurant not too terribly long ago. And most restaurants, it's just kind of like, now, nothing's just really, when was the last time you were wowed?
Blown away, right.
I was blown away by this, but I was kind of mistreated a little bit at the restaurant and left because I was not comfortable with the situation. And then when I returned, was bought like a whole round of, beverages. And
who are you mistreated by?
Well, I was not mistreated, but there was just a gentleman who was very
that worked there?
No. It was another customer.
I see. And then so you returned.
So I returned, and the restaurant was very kind and apologetic, and more than overly compensated for their customers' poor behavior. So, I got great customer service there.
You did, but what's crazy about that is they were not responsible at all for what that person was doing.
Correct.
And decided to go above and beyond, make a connection with you, and actually give a crap that you were so uncomfortable that you left.
Yes.
And even though they had no responsibility over what he did, it happened there. They care. And that, and that's
great
lovely.
Customer service. That's above and beyond. That was above what they should have done. And I think that that just goes to show there's so many things that we can do to go a little bit above and beyond to help somebody else have a better day. Even if this, I know I've had some pretty rough days, and there's days where I just woke up and I did not feel like giving a little bit extra. But you know what? The only thing that turned that day around was giving a little bit extra.
Right. And that's what I was just thinking as I was active listening to.
Very proud of you for that.
Is we have to give in work. And sometimes that's all the give we can muster. But where I find that I get that when it gives me more energy to keep giving is when I give outside of that.
Correct.
That would be beyond our job duties or job
beyond what pays your bills, beyond what does this and beyond what does that. When you start to give in those other areas of your life, and even if it does fall under the all-encompassing customer service, whatever you want to call it, engagement with people, interaction with others, it really does change your whole life and your whole perspective when you do start to give outside of that. And who doesn't want to spread good?
Right. It creates good. It feels good.
And then you get it back. It comes back, guys. It comes full circle. So
and you don't do it with that intention, right? But it just is a fact. It happens.
It's just the way it goes.
So I just got to get back to people. We got to get back to loving each other and being kind to each other and wanting to uplift each other and recognizing when we can and when we can't.
Right.
When there's energy vampires and then there's people in need. And when we've got plenty to give and when we have nothing to give and what to do then, just balancing it all out. But it starts with leading with the right heart, doing things for the right reason, being kind, being loving, being compassionate.
carry that over to your people.
People.
No, but for real,
Yeah.
like just give it forward, pay it forward. Like my words aren't flowing real great today, but
I think they are
my messages, and I just think that that's one thing that I want to focus on. And what is something that you want to implement into making your customer service better? Like, what's one thing you could give to our audience and tell them, like, hey, this is something I want to actively try to do to make my experience better?
I think my biggest thing is to continue to focus on them, and not relate everything back to myself. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to completely do that because we share with each other. That's what we do.
Right.
But I want to spend more time listening and paying attention, active listening, really being present, not waiting for a pause every now and then to go, We all do that.
It's
we
so
do.
hard some days, and there are some days at the end of the day you're just brain dead, and it's not because of that person in your chair. It's just because of the collective noise that's been clouding your head all day. It's not one person. It's just
it's a trance.
I think it's
a standing, waking coma.
You're really sleeping, but your eyes are open and you're doing hair.
And foiling.
And you're foiling. Yes, you're doing hair. Exactly.
Oh my God.
It's true though.
It is true.
So that's great. So you're just
just continue to practice that because I'm not great at it, and I feel like that will just do more, right?
Right.
I think that's a good place to start.
I like that, and I think for me, honestly, taking notes, because as I've gotten older, I don't have that great.
And when she says taking notes, she means on color formulas, changes that we do. I am not for notes on conversations about personal. That's just me. A lot of people do that. I don't
necessarily take notes on people's information like that. But as far as for me, for like business wise, for customer services,
changing a cut. Or
if I've done something, and really just trying to like make a focus on there. And then like if there is something that maybe that they are struggling with, maybe making a note to bring up. Hey, how are things going there? Because I can't remember everything from everybody, but a little like memo, like something that will just kind of spark my memory.
I think that would be good, and I think even just
and that's what I'm gonna try to do to implement to make people feel a little bit more special this year. So
I think that's good. I mean, even with making a small change in somebody's color formula, when you start off your little consultation that we do with most everybody, is, hey, so last time, remember we talked about adding a little bit more gold to your mixture? How did that work out? I think that goes a long way too. Like we were talking about with names,
100%.
But just being on top of what we're doing for them, on top of our service.
And for all of our loyals listening, we do remember a whole bunch. So don't think we're just like, we remember as much as we can. And so none of this is like,
we don't fill out reports.
We're not none of this is put on, and by no means is any of it unauthentic. It is all very
things
authentic,
that
we want to enhance that. And if we have to, as we get older, make notes, and that's what we're going to do to make sure that y'all feel special. And by no means does that minimalize anything. So we still love y'all. We're just old.
Exactly. A lot of information in here. It's starting to fill up. We got to compartmentalize.
Oh no. Okay. Sorry.
No, I meant in our minds.
Oh, I thought you meant here today.
No, I'm not being that bossy.
Okay.
But let's get to it.
Okay. But anyways, back to what I was saying.
I would love to hear some stories. I would love to hear. We don't get a lot of comments, but I would suggest any of y'all watching the YouTube.
Please comment
on some good stories, good customer service,
like something you did.
Examples when you went above and beyond. Something you might do to make your service better. Share it.
Yeah, let us know, because we would love to be able to like even just absorb a little bit of what y'all thought out there. Yeah, we want to learn. Some more ideas. Yes. So
always learning.
I like to learn.
Yeah. I just kind of want to recap on this. We are hometown hairdressers. We are service people. We are people who love people.
We do love people.
We are people who want people to love other people. And we are passionate about the things that we talk about. And that's why we share this with you, is I don't know, to
hopefully make an impact, make
make
a
an
difference.
impact. Maybe just something we've done or experience might help you in anything you might be going through. But that's why we're doing this. We love each other and we love
Well, and
everybody.
I think, yeah, I think one of the things that Ernesto and I have the gift of is when we're together, we can lift spirits. We're fun. We have a lot of energy. We bring a loving presence to the room, and people can feel that. It palpitates. And if we can do anything on this podcast, I think it's that we want to palpitate that through to you guys. Like, how can y'all bring that into your spaces? How can you uplift your coworkers? How can you make your people in your chair feel more special? How can that enhance you as a whole because they feel special? I mean, you are rewarded for that. Like, it's just so many ways that it makes a full circle. And I think, our hearts, we want to bleed that out to y'all because like we just feel like that's our mission and we feel like that's what we've been brought here to do. And so without getting emotional,
I know it is emotional though.
It is such a cool thing that I feel like we've been gifted to be able to give to you guys, and we hope you enjoy some of the things we bring.
Your little eyes are watering up, y'all. This is all right. I think we've probably said enough, but before we close it up, we are now on Apple Podcasts under Hometown Hairdressers. It took a while to get there, but we've had some help from our new producer, Jackson Moore. Thanks, Jackson.
Thank you, Jackson, so much for everything you've done so far.
Yeah, and look forward to working with him on the rest of this season, and then hopefully starting season 2, having some fun new things. I'm just going to say it.
Fiery ideas for season 2, and I'm really here for it.
So and make myself make sure it happens.
Yes. So here we are holding ourselves accountable, guys. So make sure y'all are doing the same.
Yeah. Anyway, so check us out on Apple. Again, our Instagram, hometown_hairdressers. TikTok, I'd say go ahead and look at us at Hometown Hairdressers. I don't know how to tick the talk just yet.
I cannot.
I'm working on it. We'll get it.
He's going to tick the talk for y'all.
I'm going to tick the talk, and I'm going to figure it out. Maybe by season 2. There we go. Another deadline.
There we go.
Anyway.
And do you think we've said enough today, Ernie?
I don't know that we've ever said enough, but we'll wrap it up there.
Thank you guys so much for listening. We hope you have a fantastic week. We hope to bring you another episode here within the next few weeks, and just keep paying it forward.
Absolutely, you guys. Be kind to each other and to yourselves. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.